Nirvana means in Sanskrit, blow out. That is, exhale the breath.
Guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm sitting here with Michelle Green, the Paradox Witch. What's up?
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the pod.
I'm very excited to have you and talk about all things witchy and paradoxical.
That's my favorite. That's why we're here.
Do you want to tell the crowd a little bit more about you real quick? Give you a rundown?
Yeah, I can give you like the basic. We can go into my spiritual awakening story, whatever.
All of it.
Whatever's good. So yeah, what I do is I am a paradox witch, as you say.
Spooky.
What that looks like most days is offering psychic mediumship readings through the Akashic records. I also offer like mentorship, spiritual mentorship for people to kind of hold them through longer spaces
I love that.
of initiation.
Go back. What are those? You said something. The costal.
The Akashic records.
Yeah. So what is that? What's that all about?
Okay. So people.
Just for me, because I'm like a total layman. Although
no.
I do really believe in all of this stuff.
Yeah. So I do a lot of psychic fairs, and this is the number one question I get when people walk up to my booth and like, what Akashic session? What's that? And I always say the most basic answer is it's just my access point to psychic information and also energy work. But the Akashic records themselves are like a storehouse of information, of timelines. There is the keepers of the Akashic records that I work with that are interdimensional beings. Yeah. We're going there. And yeah, I just tune in and access whatever information wants to come through right away. And then people can ask questions. Whatever. I always say, like, you can always ask any question you want, and I'll just see what information I pick up on.
Sure. I love how did you figure that kind of stuff out?
Yeah.
Because I actually had a spiritual awakening, and I had it through psychedelics, and my whole, like, it was kind of an ego death situation where like my whole life really from that point on shifted. Yeah. And I met an entity during this time, and so that kind of opened my eyes up to all of this other stuff. I'm super sensitive. I'm a Cancer. And I also have a twin sister. So I feel like I really pick up on energy so much. My whole life is about energies now. Is that me just blowing up the bad podcasting? But yeah, so I'm actually really interested in this kind of stuff, but I'm a total layman. I don't really know much. I did, what's that fucking new series on Netflix? I think it's on Netflix. It's all about telepathy, the telepathy tapes. Yeah. Have you heard about that stuff?
I have heard about it. I've like dug into it a little bit, gone down TikTok
because
rabbit
that's kind
holes.
of in that world of like you're picking up on maybe a higher consciousness or whatever you want to call it.
And I think it comes down to the fact that like we all have this ability. We all have different access points to the ability. If we can talk about the psychic senses, the 5 different psychic senses, but really there's an infinite number of ways that we pick up on, whether it's intuitive information, which is just like, our subconscious is able to pick up on stuff that we're not consciously aware of, as well as psychic information, just knowing things, sensing things, and feeling things that maybe there's no reason for us to know. And yeah, it's just a matter of like figuring out and training the muscle of what are my gifts? How can I strengthen them? And some of us come into this world with certain gifts that are stronger or more activated than other people, but with something that we all have access to.
Totally. Well, yeah, I was just listening. I can't remember the guy's name, but I was just listening to a podcast about people talking about remote viewing.
Yeah.
And like breaking
hard.
Breaking down kind of all of these things that have actually been accomplished through remote viewing and like how it actually is like totally a thing. And like there was some guy who found like a Russian submarine being built like in a factory like in the woods, and they were like, that can't be true, there's no water nearby, and then it turns out like they dug a whole canal to get it out.
Yeah,
wild.
It's like, and I've seen, I don't know the credibility of the Sean Ryan show, but I've watched some episodes of that where they have like the, CIA remote viewing people who are involved in those projects with the CIA or the Gateway program
Totally.
and come talk about that. And it's real. I work on that skill with my psychic mentor, and I want to say that is not my strong suit. It's really hard.
Yeah.
The remote viewing, I pick up more on like in our practice sessions, like the thing that I've gotten the most is I'm able to access mediumship through remote viewing, and then like picking up on.
So what is
the feeling.
mediumship?
It's just communicating with spirits.
Sure.
Yeah. It's as simple as that. And like, so like the practices that I've done with my mentor, she's like, okay, I've got these like 5 objects and they're all associated with somebody who's passed. So I'm going to hold an object. I want you to call forward the spirit. And that's a lot easier for me than her like picking up a rune stone and being like, what color is this crystal? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can tell you it means abundance.
Yeah.
Is the first thing that came through. And she's like, yeah, this is the rune for abundance, but the color is all wrong, you know? So it's like, that's more my strong suit.
I've never
like
tried those before, but it sounds kind of fun actually.
It is fun, but it's definitely like, sometimes I'm just like, can we just do something I'm good at? Because this is hard.
Well, I think it's all, and I can't, the guy named, this is a French guy who was talking, Jacques something, I can't remember his name. Kind of a bummer, but I'll slide it in here later. But he was talking about like, in order to do these types of things, it's all about like a subconscious, like connecting with higher consciousness. So as soon as you're trying to do it, you can't really do it.
Yeah.
Is what he was expressing.
This is what I say all the time when I'm like teaching people how to tune in is like the number one skill that you can develop is getting out of your own head, getting out of your own way. Because the second your mind starts to like think about what the answer could be, you're not tuned into what, you know, the answer that you can channel through is. So a lot of times, like, especially at psychic fairs, I get a lot of intense questions of like people will be like, are they going to find a cure for my disease? I'm like, oh shit, okay.
That's a loaded question.
I'm like, wow. Well, here's the deal. And I'll give like maybe some like what my mind wants to say first. And then I'll be like, well, I will tune in because my job is to like get out of my head, get out of my judgments and see what wants to come through. And so like even a psychic fair, I had somebody be like, and she ended up being, I could tell the first information that came through was like, she's really young. And she looked young, but you know, I don't know. And she's really young. And I saw somebody in her field as like a stalker or something. I was like, do you have a stalker? And she was like, oh, I wanted to ask about love.
Don't most young girls have a stalker, though?
She's literally in high school and she's talking to people online. And I just like, yeah. So anyway.
Creepy.
There's a lot of crazy things happen at psychic fairs.
Yeah. I need to check one of those out. Sometimes I wonder. I've had a lot of deja vu in my life where I'm like, I have 100% dreamt this moment.
Yeah.
And it happens maybe 5-6 years in the future. And it's like, it was before I smoked a lot of weed because now my dreams are just not as vivid. But I have definitely dreamt things. And I remember once I was on a travel trip with my old boss. We were walking down a staircase and I was like, holy shit. Like I remember dreaming this like to the T, like this moment, like being like, I don't know. And that was like 4 or 5 years beforehand.
Yeah. That's wild. And I think that's really common. It's funny. I just interviewed somebody yesterday for my podcast. Shout out. I didn't know I was psychic, the name of my podcast. And she was saying like, that's really how her spiritual awakening happened. She prophesized COVID like 4 or 5 years in the past and went through this crazy process of thinking, you know, like what's happening? Everybody thinks I'm crazy. She lost friends. And then when it all started to happen, it was like, oh, okay.
I would love to talk to her. I want to know more. There's this weird dream I had where I was in Brooklyn in, I think like Dumbo or something, like on the water, like looking at Manhattan while like all these missiles started falling. And I woke up during it. It was super intense. And then ever since then, it reminds me of one of those deja vus that I'm kind of scared to go back to New York now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the
as
thing.
weird as that sounds. Like there's just these, I don't know, the subconscious is so weird.
It is. And there's like a certain quality to like spiritual dreams I've found that there's something that really just like lingers with you. like when I've had dreams of like my grandfather passed, or dreams exactly like you said, like that end up being a deja vu moment. Like I'm just at a cafe and it was like my dream the night before, and it was like everything this person was saying next to me was the exact words that I dreamt of.
That's so wild.
And it just goes to show you, you know, the time is not linear, and through our dream state, we're able to like tap into that truth more than when we're conscious.
There's totally alternate realities.
100%. And that's what I would do the work inside of the Akashic Records when people have questions about like the future. Like people ask me about pregnancy or different things. And again, it's one of those things that I just get out of my own way and I just see if any information wants to come through and what that information is. And the truth is that there's many different timelines. Typically, when people have a specific question like that, there's like a few timelines that step forward. How I see them is like an actual line, and one will be highlighted maybe as the highest potential timeline or the most probable. I just kind of know which, depending on what the situation is. And then I'm able to see like the point that they're talking about. And then sometimes I'll get information of like, okay, you're not on this yet, but I'm getting this information that if you shift this, you'll be able to step into that timeline and it'll be in between this time. And I don't always get times, but it's happened several times where the timing has been exact that I've offered.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild. I want to know some information.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can tap into when we just get out of our own way. And, you know, I think the thing about like being a psychic or claiming that title, whatever you say, is we need each other. It's so much easier to read for other people than it is to read for yourself, because you have like all of the information, you have all of the biases, you have all of the like intensity of desire. And, you know, we just need other people to see us without the conscious mind of how we know ourselves to be and what our desires are. So I definitely have like a handful of people that I work with when I'm like, okay, help, I need some clarity right now.
Yeah. I guess that's interesting. It's probably all about the person too, and how like their frequency is and like how much they're willing. Because so many people, they're like, I want change, but they really don't want to open up their heart enough to like let the information even out, you know?
And the thing is, like, the kind of psychic that I am is like, I'm going to kind of call out the truth of what I see, and like, yeah, I'm gonna speak the truth, and a lot of times that's not like what people want to hear.
Totally.
But, yeah.
Sometimes you don't always want to hear what you want to hear though, you know?
I know.
I've never done a proper psychic reading. I've always kind of been tempted to.
Come to the psychic fair. It's this Saturday in Eau Claire.
This Saturday? Mm-hmm. I'll be running around for Amazon. This won't be out by this time either.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities we can hook up for a reading for sure.
I know. I kind of wish we had cards or something right now. It'd be so fun.
I can tune in for you if you want. Do you have any questions?
I don't know. I don't know where to begin. That's kind of, I'm interested in learning more about this kind of realm. Yeah. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know enough, so it's hard.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I'm very curious and I'm trying to figure out this thing called life. And I feel like we've all been propagandized our whole life about everything. And so you start to have these personal experiences, at least I have, because I've kind of lived an abnormal life and I've done a lot of journaling or traveling and journeying. And the more I've opened my mind, the more I'm like, we don't have a fucking clue what's going on here.
Yeah. And honestly, I concur 100%. It's funny you brought up psychedelics, because that's a part of the work that I do is journeying. And I also am hosting a psychedelic retreat this spring.
Are you?
I am. And I've worked with...
Can you talk about it?
I can talk about that. Yeah, for sure. But
what medium of psychedelics?
Mushrooms.
Nice.
Yeah, so I work with the mushrooms. I've been working with them for probably 20-ish years now, in different capacities. Obviously, you work with it differently when you're in in your youth exploring.
I was going to say, have you ever done
exploring
the Terrence McKenna hero dose? I think that's 8 grams, right? Or is it 5?
No, here's the thing. I don't fuck with that because a lot of reasons.
Don't believe me, I don't either. If you give me more than a gram, I get really scared.
I can tell you, I sat with my medicine woman, not my last dose, but my second to last dose, and we made a tea out of 3 grams, and it was a really intense experience. I had the deity I've been working with come through and yell at me. I didn't know it was her, but she was like, called me out on a lot of shit because I had been wanting to increase my spiritual gifts. And this crone, I was laying on my back, and this crone came at me, and she was like, you say you want to improve your gifts, but when a spirit comes to you, you tell him to go away. And I was like, literally the week before, I woke up in the middle of the night and like was hearing things. Like it was really loud, like Legos being sorted through. It was so weird. And I woke up and the spirit was standing above my husband. And I was just like, yo,
Damn. What does that
if you're
look
not
like?
in the light, go away.
What does that look like? Is that in your mind, or is that like
So this
physical?
was like physical. Okay. So because I went through, like in September, I sat with Bufo and had another layer of spiritual awakening, and that shit was intense. I have never experienced anything like that. It's
What's Bufo?
Bufo is a tone medicine. It's 5-3-MO DMT.
Oh, yeah, I know
Okay.
I know that.
Yeah, I know that.
5-MeO is supposed to be like the God particle.
Okay, it was intense.
Did you go to like nothing?
So I actually was, it lasted maybe 20 minutes. I went back in after like coming partially out. I went back in, but I actually received a Kundalini activation. And because you have zero control, once you smoke it, it is like you fall backwards. And I just wanted to say like, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender over and over, but like I couldn't speak. And my hands started moving, and they started doing these like, and started like pulling energy out of me. I could see the things that I was pulling out of my body. And I could feel that my hands were moving on their own, but I had no control over them.
That's
So then
wild.
for like 2.5 weeks, apparently it's called a reactivation, I would wake up in the middle of the night, be like side lying and be like, and start the like hand movements. Or instead of sleeping, I would be like pulled out of my body and be like more awake and more conscious. And I was also like not in control and like communicating with like other beings.
That's wild.
And
Because
I
your
never
brain
felt so
can
crazy.
actually
Yeah.
produce DMT.
Yeah, exactly.
So you never know, like, if you spark that, like, what could happen with those doorways.
Which is why I'm like, it is not like a beginner medicine to start working with. But it really did change my life in a lot of ways. And it started like opening me. And then it led me down this medicine woman path of starting to serve psilocybin mushrooms. And yeah,
the mushrooms have been really great for me.
Yeah.
I had an experience like really young, just like every little kid, where you don't know anything about it. And your friend's like, I have mushrooms. Let's eat half the bag each. Which must have been like 3 grams each.
for sure.
And
yeah.
I had the worst time of my life. So then I didn't touch them again for probably 15 years until I moved to LA, and I was at least in my 30s by then. And then I was like partying with a lot of people in LA at the time. And all these Venice chocolate bars were floating around, and they were like $100 chocolate bars, but they were just microdoses essentially. And that like the microdose really welcomed me back into it all. And then I started,
love the micro.
then I got hooked kind of on Terrence McKenna and all of those guys, and really started understanding why the mushroom is so beneficial. Especially for like releasing trauma, creating new neural pathways,
Yes.
like just getting out of your patterns of thinking.
Seasonal depression, shout out.
Yeah. You can't have a bad day on 0.3 grams.
Right, for sure. Yeah. But it is something that, I think the reason they call it magical mushrooms is it like really starts to open you up to the magic of the natural world.
Totally.
And I think it like really informed my path from just like starting to explore that in my youth, and especially in college. In my youth, I'm 36. But in college, really exploring that, and it led me down, for sure, a more spiritual path. And when I ended up after graduating and I moved to Canada and just really didn't have much to do. So I really spent a lot of time exploring. There's like a metaphysical shop right in the neighborhood that I was living at. And that was the place after, I didn't explore any medicine while I was there. I was not really drinking. And that's where I had my first spiritual awakening. And I say that not lightly, like it was through fear, because a lot of us, when we want to walk the spiritual path, when we want to activate our spiritual gifts, there's usually some block in front of us of fear or whatever it is for you. For me, it was really fear of like, okay, I want to like see spirits, but like, what if I see a bad spirit?
Yeah.
But like, what if I see this? And as I was opening myself up more and more and more, I woke up in the middle of the night and like saw a bad spirit. And I literally thought it was my partner at the time. Like I thought they woke up and were like staring at me. And so I went to go touch them and my hand went through their face and I was like, oh shit. And then I was like trapped in my mind with this, like, I would say like negative, evil spirit, whatever we want to say. And it was really scary. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. And then in the morning, my partner woke up and was like, so you woke me up, like, what was going on? I was like, dude. And she was like, I didn't want to say anything, but when you woke me up in the middle of the night, I saw like a shadowy figure kneeling beside the bed. And I was like, yeah, like this is real.
That's crazy.
So that was like launched me into like how to protect yourself. How do you, like see or communicate with a negative spirit and tell it to go away. And that really
I do this
me.
thing where I mentally project this white ball of light and it pushes away all of the darkness. It's weird. I did this like I don't know. I hear something in the mic. I hope it's not getting picked up, but I'm not sure what it is. I got rumbling.
A train.
We can cut this out. Coming back in. I don't know. I had this really awful roommate when I first moved into this house. I mean, he wasn't a bad dude. He was kind of young and just kind of dumb. I was like mentoring him a bit. We met like kind of in a dark time in my life when I was just moving back. I was like trying to figure out what I was doing. My creative career was kind of on the back burner. And so I let him in, but then he just turned out to be this little demon. And like he would just get blackout drunk and like get so like, and then like at the final point where I'm like, I don't know what to do with this kid. I have to kick him out. It's going to be this huge thing. And then I don't know if he was smoking crack or what his deal was, but there's a door dividing our rooms and he was standing on one side, like kind of just, it's like he was speaking in tongues almost, but it was like swear words through the door at me. Like, I'm going to fuck you.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to go to bed with my partner and stuff in here. And this house is pretty, you can hear everything. And so I'm just like laying there meditating because I'm kind of drunk too. And I just like meditated this ball of light. And I've done this a few times in my life. And I always knew it was like a protection technique. And I'm not sure why. And then I woke up the next day after having this vivid experience right before I went to bed. And then I must have fallen asleep. Like, I don't remember afterwards what happened. And he was just gone. He had moved that night. Just got on a bus and went to Texas.
That's how it works sometimes.
And I was like, what the fuck is that, though?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but I think that this is a spiritual realm, and it's all about good and evil, and it's about like what side you're on.
Yeah,
and I do think good. I think good always outpowers evil.
Yeah, and I think like especially with drugs and alcohol especially, it's like the eyes, and I noticed that too. That was something that started happening is like, when I was going through my first spiritual awakening and my partner would drink, her eyes would literally go black and I'd be like, dude, you are not you right now. Yeah. And it got a little bit like, okay, I need to ground into reality sometimes because you can get way like ungrounded and like out of control. But the truth is everything is spiritual first, and then And it just makes so much sense that like what we do in the subtle planes and the astral planes has an effect on the physical world. It's why, you know, so many of us talk about manifestation, because it all impacts each other. It's not like, it's more of an art than a science though.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think manifestation is 100% real, but you have to also do work. You know?
Hey, I know.
You know?
I know.
I feel like I manifested this house. Like for 2 years, I was like, I'm going to move back to Eau Claire. I want this studio. I want high ceilings. I want wood floors. I want it to be like, I want to have a yard too. I'm not going to move to Eau Claire and live in an apartment and shit. And then this opportunity came. It like all perfectly worked out.
Yeah.
Same with even my photo career. I kind of manifested all of that. It was just will and drive and like project, like fit, like seeing myself there until I got there, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I manifested my now husband. I manifested the house that I'm in right now. And like I had it drawn on a bay leaf. You know, I practice spells and whatnot. And so I drew this house on a bay leaf, and it was sitting on my altar for probably at least a year and a half. And when I was just like, you know what? Maybe it's not so far out in the future after all to get out of this like shithole apartment, which is like a house, but it was like one of those houses with like black mold and the wavy floors. And we have 4 kids and a dog, and it was like a 3-bedroom like house or something. And I just started looking on Marketplace and found like the exact house on the bay leaf with 5 acres of forest, private backyard.
Amazing.
And yeah, and so there's that, but there's also this aspect of like surrender and listening to where the universe, spirit is guiding you and what you're being guided into. And so like right now for us, it's like, we need to get out of this house. Because I remember casting a spell on the landlord and rubbing honey on his name and like doing the whole thing. And because I was
Where do you buy your honey for that? Is this rare pure honey?
Christoph. He's a friend. Anyways, he's got Bee Alchemy. They sell it locally.
Yeah, I love honey.
But yeah, so I was like rubbing honey on his name, and I was like, you love us. You want to rent to us because we have like non-traditional income. And then when we went to go sign the lease, he's like, I don't know. I just had like a really good feeling, like a young family trying to do something. Like, yep. I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, that comes down to like frequency too, I think, where like if you really vibrate towards that goal, they might pick up on that frequency because we're all connected in a weird way that we don't understand.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. You know, you can talk about like quantum entanglement or whatever, but
isn't
like,
that stuff crazy? For 3 billion years, it can float through space entangled until someone looks at it and then it's done.
And it makes me think of like the mycelium as well, and like the underground mycelial connections of mushrooms and how like the networks connect each other even before they like come and flower above the surface, and the inherent like connection between the trees and the mushrooms, and like, you know, it's so symbiotic and representative of how interconnected we all are.
Yeah. Do you know Terence McKenna's work at all?
I don't know.
So Terence McKenna is this like famous ethnobotanist from like the 80s, 90s. I think he died in the early 90s from like a rare, I think the CIA killed him, but anyways, he came up with the stoned ape theory that humans evolve by eating psychedelic mushrooms, and that's where you get the evolutionary gap. And he's like, you would have had all these advantages had you been a primate eating mushrooms versus a primate not eating mushrooms. Like you would have mated more. It's proven that you have better like eye coordination when you're on mushrooms too. And so you would have been like a better hunter. You would have had new neural pathways growing, that type of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, it's really, he's really worth looking into. But he also has a novelty theory, which is kind of like the theory of like time too, and how time works and how time is speeding up and how, you know, it's all connected. I don't know. I'm kind of not the smartest person. I'm just parroting what I've heard, but
yeah,
let me tell you.
Okay. I mean, the name sounds familiar, and like it's so funny you bring that up because I have weird beliefs around the evolution of like how do we get here to here, and aliens.
Anunnaki.
I mean, I don't know, maybe, but as somebody who like connects to interdimensional beings,
Yeah.
communicates with them, gets information from them, connects with them for healing work, like I 100% believe that, you know, there are beings who are not non-physical or have the ability to become less physical and more physical, more dense,
Yeah.
or less dense, and they are in the same way we're all connected to each other, and the mushrooms are connected to the trees and each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what happens with us in the experiment of humanity affects all of the entire universe and
Yeah.
being even non-physical beings.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, and I forgot to bring this up about Terrence, but he talks a lot about panspermia and about how, like, if you were an alien civilization and you couldn't cross time, like, they find mushroom spores are the only thing that can live in outer space on Earth and come back and actually be seeded.
Yeah.
And so this idea that, like, you could transform, because, like, when you take a dose of mushrooms, you're entering the nether realm. You're going into, like, another realm of communication. And if
Yeah.
you were this extremely a million years advanced, like, civilization, that you could in fact, like, create the mushrooms and then send that technology to then evolve. And then if you look at the tree of life on Earth, like, technically we are all connected.
Yeah.
In, like, a weird way that we don't understand, like, genetically. Right? So we all break down into, like, a small, if you believe in that or
Yeah.
not. But
Yeah.
I just think it's super interesting. I think mushrooms are the hidden key, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I love, and there's so many sacred medicines that ancient civilizations, and, like, obviously because of colonization, we have the ability to engage with these either as drugs or as medicine. And just, like, gratitude to those ancient civilizations who knew and listened. And I think it comes down to this, like, animism of being able to communicate with the living world, even, you know, the non-speaking living world, and getting information about, you know, not just, like, what are you good for, but who are you? And I think that's the, like, shift in engaging with psilocybin as a medicine, is like, who are you? Who am I? What do I need to know? More of this, like, opening. Mm-hmm. And it really makes a difference how you engage with the medicine. I had a really crazy last journey. I was in Colorado and at a hot springs.
Fun.
And being a very sensitive person, we rented a cabin, opened up this container, and it was a really big container. I work with Hecate, and I called her forward in her filth eater form of, like, all
I was
that
gonna say,
is
what's
not
Hecate?
Hecate.
A spirit?
So technically a Titan. So if you go back to like ancient Greece, we have Hecate being a Titan, and then she becomes this goddess.
Really? It's interesting you brought up Greece, too, because there's a lot of correlation between Greece and psychedelics. What is that psychedelic juice they used to do? I don't know if they know exactly what it was. The Kekion or something like that. But it was an ancient tradition where, like, all of the elites they'd go do this ceremony. It was not supposed to be talked about.
Like the oracles.
Yeah,
I don't
there was
know.
a specific, again, I'm a layman, but there was a specific drug that they're trying to figure out what it was. I think they call it Kekion. I could be wrong. But it was like this sacred ceremony, which essentially was like a psychedelic trip, and they think essentially it was like a DMT trip almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and
Well, I
people
think any
been
of
knowing
those
about
civilizations that, and then I'm a big proponent of not aliens, but more of a global reset, where kind of more of the Atlantis vibes, where I do believe that, like, before the Ice Age, like during the Ice Age, there was an advanced civilization that was global. And then around 12,000 years ago, we were hit by a rock from the sky that hit the North American ice caps, which flooded the Earth. That was the great global reset. If you look at South, and that's why you don't find anything in North America that's really much, because it was obliterated for the most part for 12,000 years. But you find a lot in South America. And I think South America is really interesting because they have ayahuasca, right? And if you look at, like, the architecture and the art and the people, I'm not saying, like,
like Aztec.
If you go back even farther to like the Olmecs or like, because all the ancient civilizations out there, they all talk about there was someone here first. And then even when you look at, I mean, you don't have to look far. You just look at Egypt and be like, they inherited this and they don't know quite how it all happened, right? But I think if you look at the South America especially, that was a psychedelic-based civilization there to begin with.
Yeah, and I think like this shift from the shamans being the ones to consume the medicine to have the wisdom revealed and then sharing that with society, and then this shift with colonization of like bringing it more people. We need more people to have this wisdom. And obviously now it's been something that's like commodified and it's everywhere. And,
well, I think there's a big push to make sure people don't become spiritually enlightened. And they don't want you to tune into those things because those things will immediately tell you that like the state is bad and all this other, religion. That's why I think the big push to like kill off the witches and all of the medicine men, a lot of it was at some point it became Rockefeller because he wanted to take over the medicine. But then before that, it was like the church, right? Because all the wisdom had to come from the church. So then we can't have wisdom out there in nature,
Yeah.
And that's what we're fighting against now.
It's really the patriarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what it is. And like, were they witches or were they just women of wisdom? Were they,
I heard that they were eating bread that had bad mold on it and it was making them trip.
I mean,
ergot. I think ergot is what they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they traced it back to like it was this mold that would form on bread and stuff, and these ladies would eat it and trip their balls off.
Interesting.
I think it was happening to men too. But
yeah. I don't know about that, but yeah.
I think it's what I heard, that they kind of traced it back to like the mushroom. Again, like a mushroom.
Yeah. And I mean, my Celtic ancestors engaged with the medicine as well, and Amanita muscaria and other mushrooms. Like there was an inherent connection to this as a sacred medicine. Totally. To know truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, have you ever heard of the sacred mushroom in the cross? Mm-mm. And basically this guy, I can't remember who wrote it, it's a famous book that the Catholic Church had bought up for many years and it wasn't allowed to be published, but then eventually it got like out. And essentially Christianity, actually, they were pagan cults that were mushroom worshipers. And so like even the host itself would, like the body of Christ is like,
I've heard that.
That's like a mushroom thing.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. It's true. It's
yeah.
And that's why all the Christmas stuff has little mushrooms in it from way back when. And that's where the whole Santa Claus thing comes from.
Yeah, I've heard that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was raised super Catholic, so I think it's funny to kind of look into that kind of stuff because I'm not now. I don't know what I am now. I'm just a human on the planet now, but
yeah. And then it's like, what do you almost like want to label yourself to be able to fit in somewhere, but
I'm pretty good at unlabeling myself now. I'm like, I think anybody who chooses a side of anything is kind of dumb because it's everything's so much deeper.
Shout out Paradox. So I love Paradox. It's like psychic work. I spent 15 years being a yoga teacher and studying Tantra, the Vedic, the Vedic path.
Totally.
And
I love Buddhism, Taoism, all of that stuff.
Yeah. And so like Tantra was really like it holds as its number one truth, the paradox. And I don't remember all of them right now, but there's the 5 Dharma Suktam, and they're like the paradox of life is like nothing matters and everything is significant. And it's just like it goes on and on, but like that is the access point to truth. And I try to hold that in every belief that I start to form, is to also see how the opposite is also true. And it is this like dichotomy of shadow work and manifestation, which is a big part of the online work that I do, and like I have online courses that I have, Shadow Priestess and whatnot. And it is all about how we don't want what we think we want, what parts of us, what parts of our subconscious mind actually reject, and what we think we consciously want. And if we can start to bring that to the conscious mind, bring it to our awareness, like we can actually start to see ourselves as a whole person and start to move towards our true desires.
I think it has a lot to do too with like understanding ego and like what the ego is in your mind, and understanding your mind just a slightly deeper than, because I think that's what a lot of people are lacking, is like they don't understand that like they're not that voice. Like you can get behind it. And once you're behind it, you realize, oh, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think so many people are like, so, especially like in the beginnings of our spiritual journey, we have this belief that we have to try to like shut off the mind, or we have to try to kill off the ego. Like so many people talk about like killing off the ego or like eliminating the ego. And like, while, you know, there's some truth to the power of dismantling our sense of identity as the ego, there's also, it's there for a reason. It's important. It's who we are. It makes up our personality. It makes up who we think we are in our connections. And of course, it's good to always be in questioning of that. But we're here to be an individual and to have an experience as an individual person. And so it's like, well, if we're just trying to get rid of the ego, we might as well just ascend and leave now.
Yeah.
Go to our next project as a spirit.
Yeah, I think obviously you can't get rid of your ego.
Right.
And you do definitely need it.
If you say you do, then I don't trust you immediately.
It's just more about like recognizing it as this other thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, this is a part of who I am. That's why in like shadow work, there's something called parts work. It's like recognizing all the different parts of you and the parts of you that are in contrast with each other.
I love that. So what do you think is a good step for like doing shadow work? Like how do you get into something like, how do you start cleaning up the mess?
Okay. So the system that I work with is like, there's 3 different really like phases. It's not like rungs on a ladder where first we start here, then we go here, then we go here. There's regulation, there's activation, and there's play. This is what I teach in my signature course, Shadow Priestess. And the regulation is like first learning how to engage with ourselves in a way where we can care for ourselves in these states where we're maybe being more activated, where like something is being triggered, right? We're being shown something in our life that's like, this fucking sucks. I don't want this. And we immediately typically go into like fix, solve. How do I fix this situation? How do I get out of it? And in the regulation, it's like, okay, this is here. I'm going to hold myself and I'm going to start to bring sense of safety into the body. It's a somatic approach. So there's so many different ways of being safe in the body. So many different practices that you can do. And obviously there's like yoga, breathing, shaking, processing things through the body. Sure. Leads us to activation.
I feel unsafe in my body.
Yeah.
I think that is, I've never really put that together, but there's something about like, because I've struggled with addiction quite a bit in my life. Not to the point where it's wrecked anything or like been this, like where I've had to change type of deal. It was more of like a slow thing. Yeah. Having my ego death kind of got me there too. But then because I do a lot of self-reflection and obviously I've dabbled in a lot of psychedelics, which helps you kind of get out of your own space a little bit and kind of start seeing yourself and seeing your habits as a different direction. And like even me now, like I just quit vaping like 2 weeks ago and I switched to the Zyn just to like break the habit. Yeah. And now in 2 days I'm off of these again. And it's like sometimes I just sit here and I'm like, I just can't be in my own skin. And I don't know why. Like that's been the thing where I always need something else. Yeah. It's like that external thing that never solves it. Yeah. But then you're right. Like if I'm working out or I'm doing that, then I don't feel that itch as much.
Yeah. And there's a sense of like, I really love the work of David Bedrick. He has the Unshaming Institute, I believe it's called, out of California. And his approach to addiction is so different than anyone else's. And it resonates so deeply. Is like, we first have to unshame addiction. We have to unshame these parts of ourselves that are bringing us suffering, and understanding that there's an intelligence there, that there's a time that served you so well to learn how to dissociate, to numb, to get out of your body. And what's going on now that's uncomfortable, and how is there so much wisdom in the numbing, in the dissociation, in the distraction? There's so much wisdom in that for you. There's a message from your body saying, I'm so uncomfortable. And so it's more about being so curious about like, what is this? And the old school like shadow work approach is like, let's get to the root. What is the source of it? How do we eliminate it? By discovering like what your parents did to you, that like, and that's like old school shadow work. And I really love this approach of like, okay, how can we just be so curious about what's going on right now, that this is what I feel like I need to do, and not that you need to even stop doing it, and trusting that there's something there for you. Obviously wanting to be safe and wanting to work towards like feeling safer in your body, but not from a place of trying to get out of the addiction, from a place of trying to understand it.
Yeah. Well, for me, I feel like the universe sends me like subtle cues on like how to advance. And like, this is like a hurdle where like, I hear it in my own mind, like, oh, you're still dealing with this. Like, when are you going to let this go?
And that's the voice to listen to. Be like, that is where your wisdom is when are you going to be perfect? When are you going to be better? And it's like, it's always, there's two sides of it, of the wound and the medicine, especially really starting to get into medicine work. You see how it's the same exact thing, that your drive, you're a very driven person, like your drive for success is the same part of you that is also the wound that says you're never good enough. And when you can...
Damn.
And when you can see that, like, I'm a whole person. I can see the parts of me that are saying I'm wrong, bad, not enough, not good enough, is the same part of me that strives for your success. And you can see that as like, I'm just a whole person. This is all just a part of me. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest medicine, is there's nothing wrong. That you can just sit within your body. Like, right now, there's nothing wrong.
True. I mean, they say that in addiction classes too. They're like, I mean, I've studied. I've never like been to AA or anything, but there's not a problem unless there's a problem, type of deal. But then there's subtle things too that you can live with forever. Like, I don't understand how AA is like, yeah, don't drink alcohol, but you can definitely smoke cigarettes.
That's a whole thing. AA is a whole thing. It's a cult, in my opinion. And it what it does is it shames addiction.
Yeah.
It adds to the ego identification of addict. And like, it definitely serves some people, and like, great,
I think it's good for some people. It is good, but what they preach a lot is like spiritual connection. You have to give yourself up over to like a higher purpose, which I do think is really important to feel fulfilled in life. Is like knowing that there is something there, but it's got to be real. I think the guy who founded AA, he actually wanted to do AA with psychedelic treatment. Did you know that? Mm-mm. Yeah, he wanted to use LSD to cure people and have them feel a spiritual connection versus like pushing towards the church.
I know a lot of people reach to psychedelics, and even like in my experience talking to the facilitator of the Bufo journeys that I've done. I've only done one journey, but he facilitates many journeys. He's out of the cities right now. And, a lot of people go to Bufo for healing of addictions. And I've heard firsthand from my medicine woman how she stopped drinking after she did a Bufo journey.
I want to do Ibogaine.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it, but...
It's supposed to be, for addiction, it's supposed to be insanely good. For PTSD, it's supposed to be like 19 hours of hell, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I love, the natural medicines, and I don't know what that is.
It's a natural medicine.
Okay.
It's a natural, it comes from South America, but.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool.
It's called Ibogaine.
I've heard of it.
Have you ever gone down the ayahuasca path at all?
No. It has been starting to call me, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah. There's that initial reaction. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I didn't feel ready for Bufo, but it's so interesting. The mushrooms actually brought me to my medicine woman, because I was microdosing on my birthday on a hike, and I was sitting in a waterfall and just like meditating, and the Akashic Masters came in and they showed me guiding people inside of medicine work with the mushrooms and doing healing work with it. And I was just like, oh, how would I even do that? I don't even know. And literally the next day, a woman reached out to me who I've connected with a few times. And she was like, I just had this vision of us leading mushroom ceremonies together. 2 weeks later, my medicine woman said, about 2 weeks ago, I had a vision. I'm going to be leading mushroom ceremonies. And I said, okay, the mushrooms gave us the exact same vision, the exact same day, and told us all to reach out to each other. So this is somewhere. So then I sat in mushrooms with my medicine woman. And I think that moment I said, I think I'm ready for Buffo. Can you hook me up with your guy? And
to me, that'd be really scary.
But the thing, it lasts like 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's quick.
And it's a very sacred container.
How long were you in there though?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, it didn't feel like it was.
No, it did. It's so quick. And it's so interesting because I had such a neutral, I'll say, experience because it was a somatic thing. Like, I had my hands moving and things pulling. But in my head, I just was like, oh, I'm a little nauseous. And then I was like, oh, don't puke. And then I'd be like, whatever happens, happens. And I'd be like, I surrender. And then it would subside. And so every resistance that came up, I'd be like, okay, I just surrendered to it. And every resistance I had kept melting and melting and melting. And then I just remember I flipped to my stomach and I just grabbed the earth and I was just like, it was wild. And
I've heard some wild stories.
But the craziest was the reactivations at night for like literally every night for 2.5 weeks. And even now, I'll sometimes feel the same. It's like an urge for my hands to start doing the like movements again, to move the energy. Like, but it's less I'm being moved and more like I could feel how I want to be moving. If that makes sense.
100%.
But it's informed my energy work and my hands-on healing that I've been doing is from that medicine journey.
So you didn't really have an outer body, like super outer body experience, or did you?
No, it's in the body. I mean, it was so
I've just
somatic.
heard stories about 5-MeO-D and like taking it and literally blasting to like the center of the universe where like you're nothing.
This is crazy, but the person who went after me, because it's so important to find the right person to host a journey like that, because there was like 3 people only. And they were all like older women, like 60-ish.
Yeah.
And they both had done it before. So I went first. And then when I was finishing
There's a comedy movie in there somewhere. I swear to God.
What's the 6 Perfect Strangers or something like that? But the person next to me started going in and I was still kind of, I guess I was told that I went back in the medicine when they served her. And she had a really interesting experience that like kind of like you're describing. And the medicine man like went in with her. It ended up being something that like happened, and then she didn't know that. And it's a whole thing. But I felt called to kind of like I could sense something with her, and so I was sending her energy, if that makes sense. And then I was told I went back in the medicine when that happened. But
that's wild.
I don't know.
I really want to do it, but it just hasn't crossed my path yet. And I feel like when it does, that's when it's time.
Well, I'll send you a website.
I love that.
It's almost time for outdoor ceremonies. So.
Here's another good question. Do you do any Ram Dass at all?
Not hugely. Obviously, I've heard of him, and
he's
whatnot,
big in the psychedelic movement, but then also like into the Eastern mysticism vibe.
Yeah. But I'm not a huge like fan, I guess. I'm not like an anti-fan.
Yeah. He helped me a lot in my spiritual journey, for sure. Just listening to his talks from way back in the day.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard some of his talks, for sure.
He's dead now, but he's moved on to another life.
Yeah.
Another spiritual journey. Do you believe in reincarnation?
100%. I mean, I do past life readings for people all the time. And it's so weird. I've had some like trippy experiences, especially with Mayan. I've connected to a Mayan past life, and as I was connecting to them, and it was with another psychic too, and she was experiencing the same thing I was experiencing, like in the moment, but this past version of her as a Mayan man, and he was sitting and meditating, and he was communicating two ways with us in the present moment. It was like a two-way, it was so trippy. It was like, dude, he like is talking to us.
That's wild.
Now.
Well, it comes down to like, Terrence McKenna had this saying where he said, the mushroom told me once that there are 4 days within every day. And I was like, what does that even mean? And then it's like, well, we don't know how time really works. Like we kind of have a construct that we've made, but like you never know how the parallel universes might work where like it all does kind of connect in a weird way. And like you can have these like weird communications.
Yeah. And that's how I see it. It's like, they're not really past lives. They're parallel realities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, that's kind of what I was saying.
That's exactly it. Yeah, for sure.
This is a fun conversation.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. And I guess like to wrap up the shadow work, so we talked about regulation. Activation is like dipping your toes back into those, like, I guess we'll call it like a sympathetic response in your body, and dipping your toes back into a sympathetic response. Like activation could be like a deep breathwork journey. If you've ever done that, it like really is activating for you.
Oh yeah, you can trip your balls
and you
off
like
doing
process.
that.
So you like process some deeper emotions. You like feel things in your body in a deep way, and then play is more like having fun with your shadow, like kind of like making fun of it and leaning in, I'll say. So like play is more like exit. I don't know if you've ever heard of existential kink.
I mean, it sounds familiar. I was going to say BDSM. What do you mean by play?
So existential kink is by Carolyn. She goes by Lovewell now. I think her name on the book was Killian Elliott. But her last name now is Lovewell. And she wrote the book Existential Kink on basically how we secretly love the things about our life that we think that we hate. And so she's got a whole process.
This isn't what I thought it was.
Well, here's the premise. Here's the real premise is if God created all that is, he's a kinky motherfucker.
Yeah.
And so are we. And so we secretly love our own suffering. And so it's why, and this is like holding the belief. It's not as if it's 100% true. The belief that everything in our life we created to experience our own suffering because we actually really love it. Whatever that familiar thing is for you.
I do think we love self-sabotage.
We do. I mean, and it makes so much sense. We do get a lot out of being the victim. We get a lot out of being like small. We get so much from it. It just doesn't seem like it. Like consciously when we're thinking like, no, I really want this. And it's like hard to help people into that realization. You just have to like offer it. He's like, here's a way to think about it.
Sure.
And you make your own decision around that.
This is where I think mushrooms come into play too. Like if you really want to change something and you do a couple micro doses and then you just really focus on getting out of that habit, it will change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, but my last journey in Colorado was so intense and scary. Like I was brought to the literal underworld and I had no control. And
on mushrooms?
Yeah.
Like when
it was like this.
I've been there where you see, or maybe you're just around the wrong people, maybe.
No, and so the underworld is a real place and a lot of our gifts.
It's here on Earth. I believe that.
For sure. There's the layers of the underworld. So many of us get to experience elements of the underworld, here on Earth inside of other people. And also it's a real spiritual place. And I was guided down there and I kept seeing, it was just like bugs, snakes. And it kept being like, I'm under psychic attack. I feel like I'm under psychic attack. I need to protect myself. I was doing all the things to protect myself. And Hecate came through in this deep booming voice. And she was like, what could you need protection from that is not also you? And just like the illusion of the underworld melted. And she offered me a crown. And even then I was like, man, I don't want to stay down here though.
Yeah.
But there was so many less. I'm so glad I had that. What other people might consider like a bad trip was the exact medicine I needed. And it was 24 hours after that my work burned to the ground.
Damn.
And so it was like I literally offered up a form of like catharsis, that you're welcome to work on my behalf to consume what is no longer for me. And then I got taken to the underworld, had all these crazy realizations. And from that was like, we do have power. It just doesn't look like control. And this is like, so many of us are just like grasping for control, and it's bringing us so much suffering. But
you just got to let it go.
yeah, it's like we have to almost like surrender, but remember that we are still powerful and our intentions matter. So it's like this dual, like we have to surrender to the flow of the universe, but also like we have so much power, but it's just not control. And that's what I think a lot of people get wrong when they're teaching manifestation, is like, oh, we have so much power, but it's like, it just isn't control. We can't control every little thing. That's just the truth.
No, actually, whenever you are trying to control something, it's almost better to take a step back and be like, all right,
100%.
Usually there's a lesson there. For me, at least, I've gotten a little better at that.
Yeah.
Now that I've awakened a little bit.
Yeah.
Just being in that. And that's a lot of Buddhism there, too, of just,
Yeah.
it's going to be what it's going to be. Everything. I kind of do believe that, like, there's a path, and I guess free will kind of, it's a hard one, because I do believe that, like, I can obviously, to me, what feels like free will, but I don't know if it is, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. As far as, like, everything's going to happen the way it's meant to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the paradox.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the paradox, is it's both. We have free will, and there are things that are meant for us, whether it's like we chose it before we came into this life, or it's just an experience that we're meant to have for our soul's evolution, whatever it is. But I mean, and this is like the number one takeaway from so many sacred medicines, is like, you have a much better experience when you surrender to the medicine than when you're fighting it.
100%. Almost
Same
to
as life.
anything in life.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, you're better just going with it.
Yeah. And so like, I recently got this myself, is we've been staying in this like dream home that we manifested, and our landlord is not really a great person. And just like, there's this like looming feeling that he's going to like get us on something. There's going to be a lawsuit, or like, for like no real reason, just because he can. And that's the kind of like person that he is. And
my landlord's great. Shout out Carter Barstead. Buy a house from him, guys.
Good landlords, we love you. But yeah, it's just like everything that he can take, he is. Everything that he can point to, be like, well, that's your fault. So anyways, and our lease is up. And it hadn't even occurred to me to not sign a new lease, but it's just been like this doom and gloom feeling. And then I was doing a microdose, and I was like, wait, what if I just surrender to this? What could that look like? And I was like, oh, could I move back in with the parent? Could I, and I'm just been like, thinking of what a different way of living could be like. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me, I'm like, I love camping. It's going to be summer. What if we just embrace a nomadic summer and save a bunch of money, and maybe we'd be able to like buy a house by the end of summer?
That'd be crazy. That'd be great.
So that's what we're doing. But it's like, it wouldn't have occurred to me if I wouldn't have sat with the medicine and just surrendered to like, what if I just give in to this fact that this isn't flowing anymore?
Yeah. And I have to deal with that all the time with things where you're just trying to achieve a goal, so that you're so stuck on that goal. And it's like, but the universe is really telling you to go a different direction.
It's so uncomfortable.
It can be. I didn't really, moving back to Eau Claire was a big jump for me. And it was more for like spiritual healing and like get to know my parents again, get to know my nieces and nephews.
Yeah. For
just
sure.
try to find the right path.
Yeah. I didn't want to move back to Eau Claire either. After Canada, I really came back kicking and screaming in like 2012. I was like, I do not want to move into my mom's basement. I do not want to live in Eau Claire again, because it just felt so small. I was living in Calgary. It was like city, and Canada was like just so far progressed over America in every single way. And I was on the path to become a permanent resident when my partner and I broke up. And so I just really did not want to come back here. And now after being here, it's like a totally different experience. I think Eau Claire is evolving too, but there's just something about like the city that is unique.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because I did the city thing, you know, doing the New
Yeah.
York, London, LA,
Yeah.
that I'm like, if I had come back here any sooner, I would have been miserable. But I actually wanted to be here, which
Yeah.
made a huge difference. Where I'm like, I like it here. It's chill. You just have to plan ways to get out.
Yes. And there's a sense of like being in a bigger city too that you don't realize is like creates a sense of unsafety in your body because you have to be more like vigilant. Versus Eau Claire, you can like leave your keys in your car.
I was like, yeah, it definitely made me a bigger dickhead for a long time. Like New York, you spend your 20s in New York, it forces you just to be hard because the world is hard out there. And if you let your guard down there, the city will bite you. Same with LA. If you let your guard down, like something will happen to you.
Yeah.
Where like it's nice being here and being like, I'm not stressed that my door is not locked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do. Even just like now I live 20 minutes out of town and I'm like, you don't realize I was living in the third ward and people would just like knock on your door. I found somebody asleep on my porch one night when I came home from work, like stuff like that. But living even more in the country, I'm like, wow, I'm even more relaxed. It's
crazy.
So wild.
I feel like it's a ghost town around here. It's great. I deliver for 4 days a week and I see like 3 people the entire day. I'm like, this is crazy. Who are the people that live out here? Where are they all?
They don't do a lot. It's what I found is like you can get, I mean, I've been back since 2012 and I've just found that you can like build something and it'll work for a little and then it like people just stop doing things. They'll like try something new and then they'll stop going. Like a new restaurant and then they'll stop going.
Yeah.
And it's just like
I've completely given up. If you listen to my podcast and you made it this far, guys, I love you. Subscribe to the Patreon. Support my broke ass. But I just, you know, I have more followers on Instagram than that are in this entire town. And so I think to make it here, well, I have a weird perspective because I'm a creative. So I always look at everything from that lens. And for me, it was always like, you can come back here and your piece is here, your balance is here, but like the rest of it's not here. So then you do have to kind of embrace that global side of it and be like, well, if the audience is the internet, then it doesn't matter where I am. Yeah. And so I think that has opened a lot of things up for making it a little more fun here. Because I will say that moving back here, the biggest thing I've dealt with is like the famine mentality of like there's not enough to go around.
Yeah.
And then I also obviously I like doing events and stuff, and I've had people try to pull me into other little things, and I'm like, the market here is just you can't pick a bar in Eau Claire that's busy 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're looking at it that perspective, you got to really hustle the kids that are in town. You know, the 20,000 new kids every year that come and go.
Especially for anything alternative, like in the kind of work that I do, like where I
think
even
there's
teaching
a
yoga, I
need.
didn't fit into a yoga studio because I actually taught the philosophy and went slower and like what people in town think yoga is a workout, and they don't like, even if they're interested in more, they still see it as that. And so it's like when you're different and you're not just doing what is like the norm. Like, you know, working at
people
photo.
they like to be they like to be nasty around here too. So if you do anything remotely edgy, then they're gonna try to figure out a way to put you down around here.
I know it.
But you gotta just put your blinders on and not care. Like if I cared about what people thought, then like, you know, I don't know. Nothing.
That's the shadow work.
Yeah, nothing will get done. I just know that like the universe wants me to go in this direction, and so I'm going. I'm just gonna. It's like the Rick Rubin of like, don't worry about the results. Just put it out. Just keep doing it for you and do it as real. That's why my podcast is so lax, because it's like, I don't want to portray something that I'm not. So if I'm going to do this for 10 years, I want you to know that like you're getting me the whole time.
Yeah.
Versus, and I'm kind of a weird guy, you know? So it's just, we flow with it. You know?
I get it. I don't fit into a lot of spiritual communities because so many spiritual communities focus on purity. Yeah. And like they don't even realize that they're like working towards the sense of perfection of like, I eat this, I do this, I meditate 10 hours a day. And it's like, that's not the only spiritual path. And even the last psychic fair I was at, it was Alexandria, Minnesota. Oof. There's protesters. I call them fans because they went to a printing place and literally got the name of the like market printed on like a whole sign. with saying it's demonic, obviously, but it was like they're waving it at the, side of the road, marketing our fair. But they were a little bit intrusive.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Those people are just bored.
Well, I think, yeah, they're bored. They're confused on like what spirituality is.
Well, I think people they get
other is
lost
demonic.
because that's all programming. So
Yes.
it's like you've been
Oh, yeah.
programmed to think that, but like spirituality is like yin and yang. There's two sides to it. So it's like you could definitely do good witch work and bad witch work, I bet.
I mean, and what's good and bad? Like, what's good and bad? What's, I think, and like, who's to say? Because even like baneful magic will say of like hexing people. Obviously, there's just like careless hexing.
Yeah.
But like,
But I
about
just wonder
for
what that does
justice?
to your karma.
Well,
If you're out there just doing like essentially bad hexes, air quotes.
yeah.
Where they have like a bad intent. Their intent is
And there
to
are
harm.
people that do that, but a lot of people who do baneful magic do it in the name of justice.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
But who are
is
they
it-
to decide what justice is?
has somebody been harmed?
I don't
Would
know.
you not want to have justice for somebody who harmed you? And that's the same thing as like, okay, you can go through the legal system, but also energetically, I'm going to say, please, spirit universe, through whatever herbs, through whatever ritual I use, like, may this person come to justice.
Yeah. Do you believe in karma?
Yes, but it's not as like, I feel like we want to put this sense of like morality onto karma when karma just means action. And so we're here, in my opinion, to receive experiences. And a lot of times, like, we are on various sides of karma. So like whether we want to say it's good karma, bad karma, like that's just this oversimplification. It's just action and opposite action. And I think we're here to experience it all. And so there's this sense of like, how can we remove good, bad, right, wrong from this concept of karma and just make it mean action? Just it's like our experiences.
Yeah, I'm totally with that. I think that that's kind of what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
for every good, it's like an equal and opposite reaction type thing. Where like if you do good, like good attracts good. Where like if you do bad, I'm just curious as to how people look at that in that world because I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think
And
like that's
there's
so
some,
true
you know
and
there's
also
some
not true.
evil witches out there.
I think
Or do you not think so?
I mean, there is good and evil, I guess, and it exists in people. However, I think a lot of people who practice witchcraft are in tune with nature and with truth and can recognize that, I guess. And it's more about a connection to nature. I think, I mean, I've definitely had the evil eye on me, and I don't send anything bad to people. I just say, may you see yourself.
Saying you're doing it.
Oh no, I mean, that's the worst I've done, we'll say, is like, I know.
Although you can teach me a good one, a good hex before you leave.
I just say return to sender. Like if this person is sending me ill will, the evil eye, whatever, like and all I say is may you see yourself. And so like how you say you do like a white, like light bubble of protection. Oftentimes I'll do like a mirror shield. And so I'll imagine like an outward facing mirror around me and just have this intention of like, may you see yourself, may you know yourself, because that's the true evolution of not like, I'm going to send you bad if you send me bad. I'm going to say like, I hope you see yourself clearly and grow. And whether that's going to come, however it comes on you is really none of my business.
And that's a dharmic practice, I think, to do that with like your enemies. It's a lot of Buddhists talk about how they have like walls of like people they really hate. And they hang them up in their houses just to look at them and go, you're a human and I forgive you. And,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Am I getting too far out there now?
No. And it's so funny because I'm also not above not liking people, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Oh, no,
like
totally.
there's so many people that I'm like, I'm not above talking shit because what's true to me, I would rather not suppress, and this is where like purity comes, like what I was talking about, like so many people are obsessed with purity. A lot of that is just repression, suppression of how they actually feel. So it's like, I'm not above talking shit. If like, you know, the people who are, I see are doing things that I don't agree with, I'm going to be like, yeah, let's fucking gossip for a minute.
I love to talk shit about one person only.
Yeah, I'm so real. People are like, I know it's not. I'm like, no, I'm so down for it. Like, you know.
Let it out. I think it's good to an extent, but I think you can
get caught in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People like it. There's a lot of feel good triggers when you're talking bad in the brain that I think people kind of get high on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like, you don't want to get stuck in that, because then you're just perpetuating. So this is with karma, is like when you're constantly talking bad about somebody, it's like you're actually staying in a karmic loop with that person.
Yeah. And forgiveness is the key. I'm not good at practicing that all the time, but I try to get better at it.
I think it comes down to just like accepting people for who they are, for how they are, and just like seeing them so clearly and being like, I see, and that's just how you are, you know, and can I love you still? And
well, it's interesting.
And I might get burned because of that. Go ahead.
It's interesting, but once you know, you're 2 years younger than me, but it's interesting once we get to this age too, where you're like, oh, everybody just used to be a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're like when we're younger, it's like, oh, that's an adult. Or but now that I'm my age, I like can look at a 6-year-old guy and like be like, I get it now. And it's just kind of interesting to figure that aspect of it out. You know what I mean?
A big part of my spirituality is like understanding that we are all inherently just like so innocent.
Yeah.
And like seeing that innocence inside of everybody, and just how that like melts away all of the parts of us that we think should be different than they are. It's like, we're just so inherent. Like, of course, we're so human. Of course I do this. I'm so human. Like, it's so adorable how human I am, that this is what I do and this is what I like doing, and that I have this pattern that keeps showing up. Like, it's just so innocently human.
Yeah. It's hard too, like getting older and like seeing people, you see people so far gone.
Yeah.
And you feel so bad for it, because you're like, man, they must have just had such a fucked up life, or so, you know, you feel bad for like the path that they kind of got given sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes they can have the best path before them.
Like sometimes I'm like, it's crazy to even just have been born in America at this time compared to just, you could have been born in Brazil. You could have been born literally, not that I love this country like that, but I think that we didn't have a bad life growing up. If you grew up in Eau Claire, I don't care where you were, like you really didn't have that bad. I mean, unless you had really crazy parents or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I feel blessed about. And then just having the opportunity to like kind of go after my dreams, which a lot of people don't get, is just like wild to me.
Yeah.
You know what I
You
mean?
really start seeing privilege. I think that's the thing, is like you start seeing it everywhere. And definitely I'm exposed to.
I like a little American privilege.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we use it, right? And like have an awareness of it.
Yeah, no, totally. I hate the state. I just like saying the government from now on. I'm not going to say Democrats or Republicans. I hate the government, and I hate both sides of the government, and I'm over it.
I'm over it.
Okay. But I do like chasing my dreams and being able to make art and having great conversations with people, and just being able to speak freely and do my thing, you know? I don't know.
For now, we'll see. I don't know.
Love is the answer, guys.
Love is the answer. Here's the thing, is like I spend time in community with people, envisioning like, okay, so this is what we're working with. Like, so what does, let's say, utopia, a most evolved human experience, what does that look like? And can we get down to the details? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How does our global society operate, and how can we envision that? And knowing that we are in a world of polarity, of duality, where there is always going to be good, bad, right, and wrong. What is an evolved version of that? And you can look at that on the macro of like, what's the most evolved for the whole world and society? And like for individually, there's always going to be something to work on. There's always going to be that pattern, that shadow that's there no matter what. And so how can I bring that with me in the most evolved way. And so that's like the way that I like to operate in manifestation is my shadow. I don't have to make it go away. I don't have to heal it. I don't have to do any of that. But what's an evolved version of my shadow that gets to come with me in my highest evolution?
100%. It's like, how do I make this version of me, my shadow, and then me better?
For sure. And like I envision that in my business of like, okay, so instead of having this problem, what if instead what triggers me and this feeling that I love feeling is like somebody takes my work? And this is something I actually manifested. I was like, okay, instead of how do I get all these people to sign up for this thing? It's this person. So I have so many people. This person hated it. They want a refund. And that's how I know I've made it. It's like,
Block.
It doesn't matter. I just am like, happily, or like something comes up and I have to pull from my huge savings account, or, you know, like what is that like elevated version of the thing that triggers me that could put me in flight or fight that instead is like, ooh. So then I actually had somebody take Shadow Priestess and I talk like this, and you know, some people are like, how dare you call God a kinky freak? And I want a refund. I'm like, happily, of course. It's not for everybody. I would love to give you a refund.
Also, why are you here if that's how you feel?
A referral.
Open your mind.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the yoga community I love, you know, and I just have no judgment. You do you, but this is
yoga
me.
Too. I need to get back into yoga, but I got hooked on Bikram yoga in New York City.
Yeah.
And so I like that hour and a half of just hell.
That's so indicative of the shadow of society, and that
I like
he's
leaving
such
there
a terrible person,
feeling
you know?
like I'm in a
yeah.
psychedelic trip.
No, I get it. Like, and that's why so many people love the hot yoga, even though it's like so many people are already in a constant state of stress that they put their body to the max level of stress and hope to feel better. And some people do.
It makes life easier though.
But what is the most, like, it's like looking into the yoga of what is the hardest thing for you in yoga?
Yeah.
I'm guessing sitting still, quiet, nothingness,
Yeah.
right? Being slow, being forced to hold something for a long time that you're like, can I just get out of this? Like, there's the good hell that you're like, yeah, I can do this all day. It pushes me. And there's the thing that we have the most resistance to, and that's often what we need.
Yeah. Well, I think anything that keeps me in the moment. If you're doing 90 minutes Bikram, that time is ticking real slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
Okay, before we wrap this up, because we're getting into it now. We're getting deep into it. Say I'm a total layman. Is there a good book or an author or like even a podcast episode of something that like a really beginner could like look into?
For what?
For just
specifically
any of this, like shadow work, healing, any of it.
Yeah.
I'm not the best host yet, guys.
So there's, I guess, yeah, there's a lot.
Or like
Again,
it doesn't have to be about that even. Just like a book where you're like, this is a book that I recommend to people. I love it. Like I'll recommend you a book. There's a book called Stealing Fire. It's all about the altered states economy, and it's all about altered states and what's actually going on within your brain. They break down all the basic psychedelics, but then they also break down like team flow, and they break down like BDSM. They break down like all of these facets of society that actually go around kind of this altered states economy, whether we're talking about caffeine, nicotine, marijuana, all they break it all down. We spend more on altered states than anything.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because what oftentimes that stems from is when we are in this like sympathetic nervous system state, we cannot do what maybe we think we should do. The opposite. We want to get into like parasympathetic. We want to get into rest and digest, and the truth is it's actually we do need to be in sympathetic sometimes, but what happens when we are burnt out is that's what the easiest thing to reach for is, and then we shame ourselves for it. Is like, oh, I am so tired, I'm so burnt out, I just need to binge watch this show. But it's like this prolonged freeze state that we're in, and it makes so much sense that we reach for numbing and distraction, and because of the state of society of humanity right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's a lot of benefits too, like we were talking about with like microdosing and
Yeah.
just where, just if you're trying to elevate yourself mentally, I think you have to kind of take those tools. It's like there's a famous Terrence McKenna quote, not to bring him up again, but he has this quote. I think it was Terrence McKenna, somebody, or maybe it's a Buddha quote where it's. I'm gonna fuck this up now that I'm thinking too deep into it. It has to do with like, if I can't remember. I'm fucking this up. Sorry, maybe I'll cut this out. It had to do with like, someone talks to the Buddha and the Buddha's like, "Hey, you're the Buddha. Like, why don't you meditate yourself like across this land or across this river?" And the Buddha looks at the guy and he's like, "Why would I do that? The ferry is only a dime." And it's like this idea of like, you could put yourself into a cave for 15 years to try to get that spiritual enlightenment, but then instead of doing that, there's shortcuts, and some of those shortcuts are, I do believe, are psychedelic drugs, where if you're trying to really do some spiritual work, then you might want to turn the spiritual world on a little bit. And if you're not, I think it's hard for anybody to take a gram of mushrooms and be like, I didn't feel it. You know, like I didn't feel the spiritual world in that.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the setting. Some people, are just like abusing it in a certain way.
Sure.
But I feel like, the psychedelics reveal the homework and they don't like do it for you. But when we feel stuck or in that like prolonged freeze state for being so activated all of the time, like it helps rewire our brain to open up to different possibilities. It reveals the homework, but in the end we still have to do it, exactly like you said. It's like we still have to walk across that bridge. We still have to look at ourselves and see. It just reveals the patterns. It reveals what we've been doing. It shows us clearly.
100%. I honestly, since I've taken, the first time I took psychedelics, I never looked at a tree the same.
100%.
Like, for real. I remember once in Seattle, too, I had taken psychedelics for some friend's birthday, and I wasn't having the best time. The problem with Seattle is I was around a lot of the wrong people. Even though I love you, Brian, you're probably watching this. I love you to death. But for me personally, I just felt like I was not around the right people. And then we were, like, tripping out, and all I could see was, like, you know how you just feel that demon energy in people? You're just like, I just don't like this. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up going out front. This is how deep I was, and like looking at a slug for like seriously 15, 20 minutes and like being like, this guy's fucking chill.
He knows.
But it's weird because you're not on that frequency, because I believe consciousness is all about layers. And I think that like it's very easy to switch to different layers. It's easy to tell that, like, you obviously you have a couple drinks, you're on a different layer. You have a little marijuana, you're on a different layer, right? Very easily can tell. And so getting super way out into that other field where you're not normally interacting with things like trees and slugs, and actually seeing their consciousness come through, where you're like, you're not really communicating with it, but you're communicating with it. You know what I mean?
That's the witch's way.
Yeah, right.
That's the psychic's way. That's how we all start, I think, is like, we think that it's this huge, even with psychedelics, sometimes you don't get this like whole audio visual experience. Sometimes you do, but it can be subtle. It can be just like this subtle, like, I know that tree is listening to me. And that's the same with psychic gifts, is it really comes in subtle ways, and you don't even know until you start offering it to other people, getting validation and realizing that you're tapped into something. So we're all more tapped in that we actually know, if we just would push ourselves to receive that validation, to open ourselves to get that validation. There's so much that is available to us that we can start working on then.
100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any plugs for the people out here?
For sure. Check out my social media. I'm at The Paradox Witch. That's where I post all of my offerings, events. Also, paradoxwitch.com is my website, has all of my events. I've got a couple of retreats coming up this spring and summer. We also have the mycelial activation, our mushroom retreat. We have Witch
that?
Camp, that May 23rd.
Ooh, I might have to check that out.
And then we have Witch Camp coming up at the end of July. And then I also offer one-on-one psychic readings, Akashic record sessions, psychic healing sessions.
I needed one of those readings. I need a reading.
We'll connect after. But it's all on my website. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's amazing. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Nirvana means in Sanskrit, blow out. That is, exhale the breath. Exhale the breath. The opposite, desire, is to breathe in. Now if you breathe in and hold it, you lose your breath. But if you breathe out, it comes back to you.